There we go.
All right, sounds good.
How are you?
I'm okay. It's been a couple frantic days, but I'm good right now. So my dog suddenly went blind a couple days ago, practically overnight, and ended up at the vet. They thought it was something called SARDS, which is sudden something, basically retinal degeneration, which would have meant she would have been completely blind for the rest of her life. Had her in today to a doggy ophthalmologist and a doggy neurologist. And what she actually has is an inflammation of the optic nerve, which is from an infection. So it looks like she's going to be treated with steroids and with antibiotics, and her vision will be restored. But
How old is the dog?
she's 10.
Okay.
So
Well,
hope
yeah, that's not good. That's not good news, is it?
Well, the first one wasn't. The fact that the vision is coming back. I live in a three-story condo, and so she would have been looking at tons of stairs and concrete floors, and it would have been difficult. But
Um,
I mean, she already showed a difference this morning, so I guess the vision is coming back.
well, that's good news. Good news. That would be tough. I understand. I have two cats, and
I have two cats as well, so.
yeah. There you go. Well, let me do the formal introductions here.
Okay.
This is International Writers Inspiring Change, which you know about because we featured your book, right? And we did a
Yep.
review. I actually reviewed your book, as you know. And the platform hosts this podcast called the Author Shout Out Podcast. So
Right.
that's where we're interviewing Kathie Giorgio, right? You say it like that?
Giorgio. Yep.
Giorgio. Oh, and where do you live? Are you in Wisconsin?
I live in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Well, that's so just so you know, we'll do the podcast all the way through. At the end of it, the iWick people, they'll take your podcast and they'll post it to their website, and then they'll also send you a copy of the podcast. You can use it for however you want to.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Kathie. Well, let's get rolling. Tell us about you. Who's Kathie Giorgio?
Kathie Giorgio is basically a writer. That's my number one role. I've been writing my whole life. I was published for the first time at 15 and just kept on going. The book that you reviewed was book number 15. It's a novel called Don't Let Me Keep You.
Mm,
Book number 16, which is a poetry book, Let Me Tell You, Let Me Sing, just came out last week. And book number 17 is due out like February or March, so which is another poetry book. So my whole world revolves around writing. I also own and operate All Writers Workplace and Workshop, which is an international creative writing studio. We help all writers, all genres, all abilities, to the short story, the poetry, essays, novels, memoirs, whatever they write, they're welcome here. And we provide workshops and classes and coaching and editing. And the majority of
mm,
the writers do go on to traditionally publish.
okay. And your books are traditionally published through a
Yes, they are.
publishing house? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Well, 15 books, 16 books now, and number 17
16
coming.
books
That's
now, yes.
impressive. I only have 15 published. You beat me already.
It's been an amazing ride. I was well known as a short story writer. I did not have my first novel published until I turned 50. And so all of the books since then have been in the last 15 years. So I don't know where it comes from, but all of a sudden I have a way in, and that seems to be getting me out there.
Hmm. But you've always wanted to write. You said you've been
Oh, you
writing since
bet.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
I,
just sort
I
of been,
started writing as I started writing as soon as I could write. I was writing
ah,
stories and books.
so you're doing this full time now. What was your career before that? Or what were you doing before that?
I mean, I have always considered myself writing as a career. Before I opened the studio and began to teach, I did a bunch of everything. I worked as a secretary, I worked as a weight loss instructor, I worked at the Humane Society, any place where I could be, I was. But then I was asked to teach my first class and fell in love with that and taught for 10 years and then decided to open my own business.
And that's the platform, the All Writers Workplace.
All Writers Workplace and Workshop. Yep.
Right. So is that done mostly online, or do you do in-person work?
Yeah, I do it in person too. It's both live and online. This condo I live in, the 3-story condo, it's a live where you work. So my
Mhm.
business is on the first floor, and then I live on the second and third floor. So my classes are held downstairs. And otherwise I'm on Zoom. So
Yeah.
yeah.
The Zoom is the new go-to.
Zoom is
Uh,
amazing. You know, I
yeah.
mean, it saved us during the pandemic. We were one of the few businesses that thrived during the pandemic because everyone wanted something to do. So they began to
Mm,
write, and we were still open and in business thanks to Zoom.
that's great. It's great. I agree with you. I agree with you. You know, I'm going to delve a little bit more into your book now because I read as Don't Let Me Keep You, right?
Right.
That's the title. Um, you know, it was sort of, for me, it was a sort of I'm a thriller writer. I write geopolitical thrillers and stuff. So when I read the book, it was a bit of a slow burn as I was going through it. But then I started to, it got very deep. I mean, I thought the roots it planted were quite, because somehow as I was reading, I thought, there's a lot of Kathie Giorgio in here. Like, is this
Relatively. Yeah.
paralleling your life a little bit? A lot?
I don't know that I would say it parallels it a lot. You know, the main character of Don't Let Me Keep You is Hildy, who is brilliant in math and science, which I certainly
Mm,
am not.
mm,
And she was encouraged to go into that life, and she decided she wanted to stay home and raise children. I do have 4 children, and of course they are very important to me, but I worked all through their lives. So, you know, but it means a lot to me. What I really wanted to touch on with that book was that when we talk about feminism, when we talk about equality for women, that should mean equality for all women, including women who decide they want what would have been considered a traditional female lifestyle, staying home,
right.
getting married, and raising children. So that's what
Which
I
is an
really wanted.
interesting twist on the story because when it first started off, I thought, yeah, okay, here's this mathematical genius, yeah, a rising star, and then she flips the switch and she goes the other way. She goes with, like you say, a traditional lifestyle. I want to be a mother,
Right.
and that's not the usual story you read about, you know.
No, it's not. And that's why I wanted to touch on it, you know, because I feel like at times when we are pushing equality for women, we're looking at it as more giving women the equality to be doing what men are doing. And I
Mm,
think it has to be the equality of choice. Women get to do what women want to do as and what men want to do. You know, it can't be such a narrow view that stay-at-home mothers aren't considered valuable. Of course they are. That's what they choose to do.
mm, exactly. No, it kind of reminded me. I mean, also when I got to the end of the book, and you know how Hildy sort of was reflecting on her life and what had happened with all her kids and the direction things went, and how she then jumped into becoming a writer and
Yes.
published it. Now that
Yeah.
part of it, I thought, okay, there's a little bit of this, maybe Kathie here, but okay. But I thought it was a great message because it basically told us how important mothers are.
Right.
Women. I mean, we don't have a human race if we don't have mothers and
This is
people who like
correct.
really
Yes.
want to be mothers and care for. I mean, that nurturing spirit. You know, I lived in the States. I mean, we're over here in Sweden. That's where we were, our work we operate from. But I lived in the States for 30 years, and you know, I would love to see a woman become the president because I think we need a little maternal love in the White House and not all this male ego. But you know,
That would be very nice. Yes.
I think so too. You know.
Yes, I agree. I was so hopeful with this last election, and of course, it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. We'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But anyhow, it was a good story, you know, and like I said, it was a slow burn that built up to a really quite a great message. So,
Thank you.
um, so the new book that you've got out, Let Me Tell You, Let Me Sing, is this poetry or what?
This is poetry. Yeah,
Okay,
it's a collection of the poetry that I've written over the years. So there's no real theme to it. It's just bits and pieces that I've done.
okay, okay. And that just came out now. That's just
Came
published now.
out last week. Yeah.
All right, great. Good, good. The other book, I was cruising through your 15 list of books, impressive. Um, and you had a book in there that really caught my eye. And where's the title in this? Oh yeah, it was called Hope Always Rises.
Yes.
And tell me about that story. It looks fascinating.
Hope always rises. I mean, writers are always asked what is their favorite book, and we're supposed to answer like we do children. You know, I love them all. But Hope Always Rises just, it was a book that wrote me. And I was amazed at how this book came out. The genesis for it was, you know, doing what I do. I work with a lot of creative people. And among creatives, there is a high rate of suicide. So I've known a lot of people who have chosen to end their lives. I have been stunned at people's response to this, that they treat people who choose to end their lives as criminals, as monsters. I was in a coffee shop here in Waukesha having lunch, and there were two women behind me talking about apparently a friend of theirs who had just chosen to end her life. And they were just shredding her. What kind of
Mm,
monster is that? Why would she leave her children? What is her husband going to do? And it just made me so angry. And I stood up and I turned to them and I said, you know, you are asking the right questions. Why did she do this? But you should be looking at it as, what kind of pain was that woman in that she would consider this an option? And then I walked out. I went home and I started to write this book. And Hope Always Rises is set in a special gated community in heaven. It is only for people who have chosen to end their lives. Hope is the main character. I wanted to do something a little different with her in that she had a lifetime of depression, but there was never any really outward reason for it. There
mm.
wasn't, you know, her family life was fine. Her parents were very, very supportive. She's an artist. She had a lot of support for that. Married, two kids, but always she has what she calls the gulf, which is the depression that comes over her and just makes her so sad. And so the book starts on the day that she decides to finally end it, and she shows up in heaven. In
Is
my
this,
version of
okay,
heaven,
you're saying depression was the reason why she ended her life. Okay.
yes, yes,
All right.
she just could not take it anymore. And she
Mm.
had tried everything. She had been hospitalized, she had been on medication, she'd been through every kind of therapy, and nothing worked. So she gets to heaven, and we do meet God. God is one of my main characters, and he's one of my favorite characters ever. If heaven is anything like my heaven, I'm going to be happy to go. Uh, Everybody stays in condos for the day that they died, so that everybody in the condo building was dead on that day. In her case, again, everyone is surrounding her has also chosen to commit suicide. And
On that particular day.
on that particular day, yes.
Right.
Anyone who is in this gated community is also required to go to group therapy forever. They go once a week. Their group therapy leader is also someone who has chosen to end their lives. And in this case, Hope's group leader is Virginia Woolf. So I got to write Virginia Woolf too, which was a ball.
That was a great idea.
I had to do something because I could already hear in my head readers saying, why is she letting them off the hook? Why aren't they having to face the consequences of their actions? So I made it so that everyone in this community also has a portal in their condo. And every day they have to look through this or portal at least once a day, maybe twice a day, and it shows them what the people they left behind are going through down on earth. So she has to see how her children are reacting. She has to see how her husband is reacting, how her mom is reacting.
So she's forced to look at the consequences of her decision.
Exactly. All of them are. Yes. So
Wow.
then I wanted more going on in this book. And as you probably noticed also in Don't Let Me Keep You, there are chapters that are complete short stories. My love is the short story. If I could write nothing else in this world but one thing, it would be the short story. So many of my novels have short story chapters. Hope has chapters that are the stories of the people that she's in group therapy with. So you get an array of reasons as to why do people choose to end their lives, so that you get a full picture of what's happening. So, I mean,
Well,
I
so what was the purpose of the book? Was it to basically put the spotlight on the fact that it's not just a monstrous act or something, there are reasoning behind this.
correct, correct. Yes.
And what was so special about this character, God, besides the fact that he's God?
He is very human.
Mhm.
And in fact, you can see, do you want me to show you the cover? It's right behind me. I can grab it.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Yeah, grab it.
This is Hope Always Rises.
Right.
So the picture here shows two people sitting, and here's a whale tail. And one of Hope's first meetings with God was at the ocean. There are several oceans in heaven. And she always wanted to see a whale tail. Here's a whale tail. But as they're sitting there, she's sitting with God on the beach. They're barefoot, their feet are in the water. And she looks down and she notices that God has hairy toes. And she is absolutely stunned by this and says to him, "You, God, you have hairy toes?" And he says, "Of course, I made man in my own image. What were you expecting?" So God is a very human character throughout this.
Um,
And one of the storylines that pulls you through is Hope keeps asking him, "Why did this happen? Why am I depressed all the time? I went through all this testing, I went through all this treatment. What went on?" And God keeps saying, "I do know the reason for that, but I'm not ready to tell you yet." And I'm not going to tell you so that you'll read the book. But, there is a reason for it.
do
And
you
I can,
reveal that reason in the book?
yes, I do reveal that reason in the book.
Wow, cliffhanger. Okay.
And I can tell you that if you look at the book's reviews, there's very few negative reviews, but the ones that are negative are all for the same reason. They don't like the reason that I gave for Hope to be depressed all the time,
All right.
which I'll tell you that much. It's simply that sometimes God makes mistakes. And he made a
Okay. You
mistake
don't
with
have
Hope.
to, yeah, you don't have to reveal much. I think people should read the book. I would like to read
Yep.
that book anyway.
Oh, I hope people do. I love this book.
Uh,
So
you made an interesting statement and you caught my attention on this. You said creative people, I don't know if you used the word often, but you said creative people commit suicide sometimes or often.
there's
I
a
can't
high
remember.
rate of suicide among creatives. Yes.
Why? Why is that?
The general thought is that creative people tend to have a high level of empathy and
Mm,
sensitivity. So they tend to take on the world around them. They take on the feelings. And, I know there was just an article this morning in one of the Wisconsin papers that the rate of suicide in Wisconsin is going through the roof right now. And I think a lot of that, from what they're saying and from what I'm seeing, is all the unrest we have going on in this country right now. It's crazy
mm,
here. Everybody is divided, everybody is fighting. Every day there's more crime, there's more anger, and people who are empathetic are feeling that. And
mm.
it gets really hard to deal with it because you begin to lose hope. It's like this is never ever going to get better. So I think from what I've read anyway, and I read a lot when I was working on Hope, it does seem that creatives have a higher suicide rate simply because they are more open to the pain and distress in the rest of the world.
Mm.
They can't lock
It kind
themselves
of
in.
leads me to, I was reading a book just this last week. I did a review for an author. That's what I do. I do reviews for for iWig, but she was talking about reincarnation.
Mm,
And she said, death, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, death is a very cool thing. It's not a bad thing. It's an opportunity to, you get emancipated. You can let go of like an old body or a bad situation or pain, and gives you a different perspective on it. And also, so from the perspective of somebody who takes their own life, um, is it better to continue to live like that, or is it better to just say,
I'm done. Yeah.
I'm done? Yeah, I guess there would be two perspectives on that.
There definitely would be. And I am willing to bet that your perspective would change if you were one of these people who was feeling so overwhelmed and so depressed, and you get to
Mm.
feel what that really is like.
Well, gonna read that book.
I hope you
Um, you mentioned the subject, obviously, about equality for women, like the right to
yes.
make a decision one way or the other. Is this a theme in your other books, or is it mostly in
Women's issues are a theme in a lot of my books.
okay.
The one that comes to mind for me right away is I have a novel called Rise from the River. And that one is set in the first 3 months of a woman's pregnancy, and the pregnancy was the result of a rape. And so the 3 months she's having to decide, am I keeping the child? Am I adopting the child out? Am I aborting the child? I threw everything at this poor character. She's was already, once she was pregnant in high school with her first boyfriend, she had an abortion, so she knows what an abortion is like, what it feels to go through that. In college, she made another mistake, became pregnant. This child she kept. She is now a single parent mother. So she also knows how hard is it to parent, especially when you are on your own. And now it's the child of a rape. I wanted to bring out in that book that in 39 states in the United States, including Wisconsin, if a rapist is found and the victim is pregnant, she cannot give the child up for adoption unless he releases his parental rights.
Even if it's based on rape.
Even if it's based on rape, he has father's rights. And there have been cases where the rapist has said, I will give up my parental rights if you drop all charges against me. And it will happen, because the woman wants to be able to do what she wants to do. If she chooses to keep the child, during her pregnancy from prison, the rapist can ask for updates on the pregnancy. When the child is born, he can receive reports of what is going on with that child. His family, the grandparents of the child, the aunts, the uncles, can ask and will receive visitation with that child. When he is out of prison, he can ask for visitation. He will receive it. And in some cases has even been given partial custody. So
Well, I hear you're telling me a story here, a surrealistic story that such a law
it's
exists in
real,
America,
and
but like,
it's 39 states that have
that's
this.
unbelievable.
And
That's
of
just
course,
unbelievable.
now abortion has been abolished in a lot of states. So it used to be that the only choice a woman who was pregnant by rape had was to abort if she didn't want to have any contact with the rapist
Mm.
from that point on. Now, even that choice has been taken away in many states.
So,
And
okay, you took a bite in that apple. What's your view on this whole thing about taking away women's rights, Wade versus Roe, and
I'm actually working on a book about that right now.
yeah,
So yeah, it's a very big thing to me. I am a very strong believer that women should have control of their own bodies, and it
of
should
course.
always be their decision.
Of course, it shouldn't be a panel of men making that decision.
Exactly. Yeah. So
So
the
you
fact
don't pull
that
any punches. You don't pull any punches in your book. You go straight for the juggler, rape.
I do. I do. I'm known as an honest writer. I'm also known as a disturbing and dark writer, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think I throw light on things that need to be talked about and need to be figured out.
Yeah, but that's an interesting statement there, like disturbing and that's almost synonymous with telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really.
It
Mhm.
really is. Yes.
I mean, I know that as an author because in a lot of my books, I have very contemporary issues going on in society. People think it's kind of like a dark thing to talk about, but it's the truth. And
Yeah.
if that's dark, well, I guess it's dark.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
So that,
Well,
yeah, women's issues are big for me.
well, that's good because I think, I mean, I feel, again, I'm not trying to get into a political sideshow here, but I feel that this whole uh, taking away women's rights from an abortion point of view, uh, it's regressive for a democracy like America that was
Very much so.
progressive and is now, I feel, sort of like the Handmaid's Tale, sort of regressing and going back the other way now.
That's what it feels like. Yes.
Yeah.
So in fact, the book that I'm currently working on, in which heaven appears again. I didn't know heaven was going to appear again, but it is. Um, I started on the day that Roe v. Wade was overruled. And one of my
Mm.
main characters on that same day has discovered that she's pregnant and now doesn't know what she can do. Today in Wisconsin, there was a loophole that was found that is allowing women in Wisconsin to still get abortions, but I've no doubt that that loophole is going to be caught and pulled, and it's going to be abolished again. So
Who has that power? Is that the Supreme Court that says okay, or is that Donald Trump?
I think it is the Wisconsin Supreme Court that
Okay.
decides.
Yeah. Well, sad. That's just all sad. Okay, I want to flip over to another subject which I read about in your bio. I love this anecdote about Ray Bradbury, also one of my favorite authors.
Yeah.
Uh, you wrote to him when you were what, 15 or 18,
I
something like
was
that?
I was 17
Okay. And
and I
what
was
advice, and I saw the advice he gave you, but then you also mentioned he passed along some research materials that you could use. And I thought, what kind of research materials did Ray Bradbury give?
and
Were
you
these
know that was
secret tomes?
no, it was mostly articles and of course a list of resources as to where could I find writing advice, particularly marketing advice. For me, even though he gave me that stuff, and honestly, I don't even think I still have that, but I have the letter. The letter is framed and hanging up on a wall. He said you got to read. You must
Mhm.
read every day. You should. His belief, and one of his favorite phrases was stuff your eyes with words. And he said, you know, read beyond your genre, read every genre, read the backs of cereal boxes, read plays, read music lyrics, read everything to do with words, and that will help you on their way. And he is exactly right. You know, if you limit yourself to only reading what you want to write, you're missing the whole world. So
Totally. I totally agree with that because you get a tunnel vision. So then you're not actually, yeah.
exactly.
I love to read other authors' books because for me, I always get inspired by them. It sparks my own writing. I get my own creative juices going on on that. So
No, he was
yeah.
he was amazing. And
I'm so surprised that you were able to write him a letter and get an answer from him because I'm sure that he doesn't do that with everybody. Like he probably
no,
had a massive fan club at the time.
yeah, and actually in Waukesha we participate in the Big Read. And the first book that was done with the Big Read, if you don't know what that is, it's when a city all reads the same book. And the first book they did was Fahrenheit 451, which
Wow.
I have lectured on in different places. So I was doing a lot of presentations, and his biographer came, and I got to meet him. And he told me that he was in Bradbury's office, which Bradbury never threw anything away. It was it was a mess. And he said he just happened to open a book and out falls a letter, and it's the letter that the biographer wrote to Ray Bradbury when he was a teenager. So I'm hoping that somewhere in Ray Bradbury's stuff is my letter that I originally wrote him, because back then, of course, it was all US mail. It wasn't email,
Right.
it was paper mail. So,
There's old paper mail, yeah.
yeah.
Fascinating.
And what a nice guy. He didn't have to answer a 17-year-old,
Yeah,
but he did.
yeah. Yeah, and also great advice too.
Yes, yes. I was at a crossroads. I was graduating from high school, and I was accepted at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I wanted to major. At that point, it was called English with a creative writing emphasis. There was not a creative writing major. And my
Mm.
parents said, absolutely not. You have to have
Yeah, I saw
something
that when they
that's
said you need to get a job that's going to pay the bills. I've heard the
exactly.
same thing, by the way, and I'm sure most other authors have also heard
Yes.
that too.
So, and I didn't want to major in something else. This was my life, which is why
Mm.
I wrote to him. And that's why he said, just keep reading and keep writing. I was in special education for a year, focusing on the autistic. Then I switched to social work, and I so hated it, absolutely hated it. So I changed my major to English with a creative writing emphasis. Told my parents that if they were paying for my tuition and books, I was paying for my room and board. And I said, if you
Mm.
don't want to support me anymore, that's fine. I will drop out of school. I will get a job until I can afford to go back, but this is what I'm going to do. They did continue to support me financially, but whenever they were asked, what's Kathie doing in school? They said, oh, she's getting married, because I was engaged at the time. They would never, ever admit that I was an English major.
That was a softer landing for them, huh?
Yes.
It's an interesting story.
Well, and they unfortunately both are gone by the time my first book was published. So they don't know that I ended up
Mm.
doing pretty well in writing.
And another way they might know about it. You never know.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe they're sitting up there with my friend God and
Maybe
talking to
they're
him.
reading your book. You're reading your book, yeah.
Could be.
So you've already discussed what's coming out, which is this book about the the Wade versus Roe and the rape case, right?
I'm currently writing that. It's
Okay.
not in marketing it. I do have another book coming out. It's another poetry book that is called The Birth of a Widow. My husband passed away a year and 2 months ago. He was walking across the street in downtown Milwaukee to catch his bus to come home, and he was struck by a passenger van and run over. Survived for 5 months
Terrible.
and ultimately died of complications of traumatic brain injury. So, you know, a horrible time, absolutely horrible time. And I go once a year, sometimes more than once a year, to the Oregon coast just to be by myself and get some writing done. And that year, he died in June of 2024. I went to Oregon in August. And when I was there, I suddenly began to write poetry about the whole experience. I didn't plan it. In fact, I was thinking I was going to be holding it at arm's length. I didn't know that I could ever write about how hard this all was. I mean, my husband didn't die. He was killed. And that's a whole different thing. He was only 59. So I began to write these
You-
poems, and in my head, I felt like I have to kind of keep a grip on this, because I don't want my life to be about grief. I don't want it to be a huge part of who I
mm,
am for the rest of my life. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book. I'm only going to write the poems when they come to me. I'm not going to sit down like on Christmas Day and say, here's the first Christmas without him. Let's write a poem. I'm only going to write them when the lines show up in my head. And I'm only going to do it until the first anniversary of his death, which
You consider
was
that you consider that writing is cathartic for you?
very much. Yeah, at least in this case, it was cathartic. Yes.
Um,
So I finished the book on the day after his death anniversary, because the day of the anniversary, my daughter was with me and she needed her mom. So I had to focus on that. I gave the book when I came home, and the hardest thing ever with that book was then that I had to sit back and look at it with the eye of an editor and rewrite and make sure it said what I wanted it to say, which I did. And I wrote an introduction, and then I sent it to my poetry publisher and I said, here it is. I know you have a book of mine coming out, the one that came out last week. So, and I'm new with this poetry publisher. So I was like, you don't even know what my batting average is. You don't know that I'm going to sell for you, but I'm offering it to you anyway. And they accepted the book in 9 days. And originally it was going to come out next fall, a year from the one that was just released. But I've been offered the opportunity to be keynote and speak and read from the book in the spring. There's a group in Milwaukee called Vision Zero. It's a project that aims to have zero pedestrian deaths by 2037. I don't know why 2037. But they contacted me after Michael was hit and then after Michael died. Milwaukee is in the top 10 list of the worst cities for pedestrians in the United States.
Why?
I don't know. You know, the drivers drive like crazy. You know, and I think they know that for the most part, the driver that hit Michael only was given a citation for failure to yield to a pedestrian. He was charged $73. That's it. No other charges.
But he took a life.
It took a life. Yes, it surely did, and caused a lot of suffering before that life ended. So I went to my publisher and I said, you know, I have this opportunity. It's a chance to try to bring change to Milwaukee to make this better for other people. So they decided now the book is coming out probably in February. So I'm going to have one book on top of the other. And I guess I better be ready to read from this book in public because it's, you know, this is a hard book. This one is very personal.
And like I said, you don't pull any punches. You tell the story like it is.
Damn straight. Yes,
Good
I
for
do.
you. I think that's so important. I think, like from the whole purpose with Writers Inspiring Change is to promote authors, but not only just authors, all authors, but also what they do to inspire people. Because
Mhm.
like Bradbury, he inspired so many people. He inspired me when I was young. It's the power of words. You can't.
Right.
They plant seeds. They're timeless. The words keep echoing down the channels of time. That's just the way it is. So,
Right.
well, good for you. I mean, you should come back to us and let us feature and review your books again because they're good books. You have a good
Thank you.
message. All right. Well, we know what's coming up. I always have this last question. We're going to be ending off shortly here, but I have this one last question. I always ask this of authors. What would you tell, and I'm sure you've already thought about this, what would you tell a new aspiring author? What would be the one thing you tell them?
Undoubtedly don't give up,
Mhm.
but that has a whole new meaning now. You know, there is so much that's happening in the publishing industry with the rise of AI. And in a lot of ways, that is very discouraging. You know, my books were included in the books that were stolen by ChatGPT to train ChatGPT, and that's horrifying to me. I'm also learning about now how Amazon is restricting, and I think this is an amazing restriction that it's considered a restriction. You can now upload 3 books a day for publication on Amazon, which you can write 3 books a day because of AI. You can tell AI to write a book about this, write a book about that, throw your name on it. 3 books a day, which means that an individual can publish 21 books a week on Amazon. This is creating, there was already a glut in the market.
Mm,
And I don't mean to slam self-published authors, but a large part of that is because of that. It's not just traditional publishers coming out with books now. Anybody can publish a book. So it's getting harder and harder and harder to garner any attention and to get your books noticed, even when you are with traditional publishing. My advice right now to writers is to really dig into what they got into writing for in the first place. The love of words, the love of telling a story, or being lyrical with poetry, or telling their own life story with memoir or with essay. And really remember that and embrace that love and go and do it anyway. I know that I would write no matter what. If I heard tomorrow you're never ever going to be published again, I would still be writing. It's too much of who I am. And so don't give up. We just had a landmark deal this week. It was the largest copyright suit ever in the United States with one of these AI places that had stolen books copyrights. They have to pay something like $1.3 billion out to the people that were affected by this. I think the tide is changing. I'm hoping that there's been enough horror in the United States over what is happening to literature that I think it's going to turn out okay. I am cautiously optimistic. So in the meantime, you don't give up. You stay with what
that's
you
true.
love and you do what you love.
That's good advice. And I find that most authors offer the same kind of advice, slightly different worded, but it's always the same thing. Stay with what's in your heart, what you want to say, what's your message, what's your purpose.
Right.
Yeah, you could be a marketing guru and you could just write to sell books, or you can write because you love to write.
I write to write. Yes.
Exactly. Great talking with you, Kathie.
Nice talking to you too.
As I said, this video podcast will be picked up by the IRIC people and posted on their page, so you can actually refer people to the podcast page anytime, so they can watch it
Okay.
there. And then they'll send a copy of it to you as well, so that you can post it on your website or your social media, whatever you want to do with it.
Perfect.
And yeah, definitely come back to us again if you want to have another book review or feature. We love your books so far.
Whenever you want. If you want to do
All
Hope
right. Well,
Rises, I'd be right there. So
yeah. All right. Great talking to you
great
from
talking to you too.
Wisconsin. Have a great week.
I will.
And good luck with your new launch.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later.
All righty. Thank you.
Bye now.